Now, following speeches by dozens of world leaders criticizing Israel and calling for the end of its war on Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the General Assembly with many delegates walking out in protest. Protest in solidarity with Palestine greeted Netanyahu as he arrived in New York to address the annual event. In his address, Israeli Prime Minister vowed to finish the job of eliminating Hamas in Gaza while also railing against what he calls a disgraceful decision by some Western countries in recent days to recognize the Palestinian state. Netanyahu, who has an international criminal court arrest warrant against him for alleged war crimes, will meet on Monday with U.S. President Donald Trump after telling reporters on Friday that negotiators are very close in striking a deal to end the war and return hostages.
Please order in the hall.
Now I want to ask you a simple question, a simple, logical question. Would a country committing genocide plead with the civilian population it is supposedly targeting to get out of harm's way? Would we tell them, get out, if we want to commit genocide? We're trying to get them out. And Hamas is trying to keep them in. And this charge is so baseless. The comparison to genocide, wholesale slaughter of populations. What, did the Nazis ask the Jews to leave, kindly leave, go out? Did others, you want me to name all the genocidal leaders of history?
Let's cross over now to my colleague, Bernard Akede, who has been covering the sessions this year. I mean, a very eventful one for you today, Bernard. We had a walkout protest and a protest outside. Talk to us about reactions around you to these major events before you talk of the others.
Thank you, Felicity. And yes, truly, it's been quite an eventful and active week of the UN General Assembly, the 80th UN General Assembly. Concerning the protests outside, well, almost throughout the entire week, there have been pockets of protests outside. Of course, security operatives have kept quite a good perimeter away from the premises of the UN General Assembly, the UN building, I beg your pardon. So those who want to stage protests, it's controlled. We've had people staging protests for Palestine, for people of Palestine, and then we had some from Sierra Leone, Cameroon, and a few other countries staging protests, quite a distance away from the UN building. But I think the biggest drama today, and what a way to end the high-level week, was the speech by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, which you just talked about, and of course the walkout that was staged by certain delegates. There was a count of at least 100 delegates who staged the walkout. It wasn't unexpected, so to speak, because the same thing happened last year, and as they walked out, some were even clapping hands for them. Even Benjamin Netanyahu himself put up quite a show. He had a badge on his chest there that had a QR code. I'm not sure what you would have seen if you had scanned that code, but there's a QR code on his chest. I think some texts claim that it was in respect to the Israeli lives that were lost in that October 7 attack by Hamas. But it boiled down to what he said, basically, just like you stated in your introduction, where he claimed that countries that are recognizing the state of Palestine are not doing justice to the lives that were lost in Israel, the Israeli lives that were lost, and the hostages that are still being kept in under Hamas territory. He said that the job, they would continue until the job is done, and by the job he meant wiping out Hamas. He also said that those supporting supporting, I wouldn't say Hamas, but the state of Israel, are giving chance for terrorism to brew just next door to Israel. And he said it's having that, like saying you're having Al Qaeda just next door to New York, basically. But long and short of it is the question that many people are asking: what exactly is the United Nations body going to do about this? Netanyahu has said it is not a genocide, as some have claimed he should be charged for genocidal crimes, and he's saying that they have given notification and information for civilians to get out of the city or the part that they want to attack, because they believe that these parts are occupied by Hamas terrorists. You know, that if it's genocide, we wouldn't say get out. You know, so the conversations are still ongoing, Felicity, and the question still remains: what is the UN going to do? Is it going to continue to talk, or will there be actions? But I think a deeper question is, what can the United Nations do actually?
All right, beyond the protests both in and out, and one from Cameroonians in diaspora, how visible was Africa's agenda in today's sessions and conversations?
Well, I would say Africa's agenda, not just today, but the entire week, is one that Africa has been pushing for quite a while. And it's the same one that Africa has been pushing since last year. The largest agenda, if you ask me, was having, or is having, Africa, or an African country, to have a permanent seat at the Security Council of the United Nations. It was the same conversation last year, it's the same this year. Besides Cameroon, the Nigerian vice president didn't request, he literally demanded that Africa be given a permanent seat. And not just Africa, he vehemently stated Nigeria and gave several reasons. The Kenyan president as well did the same thing. The South African president did the same thing. And so I think largely Africa's demand right now and Africa's conversation has been tilting towards having a permanent seat at the Security Council. Of course, there's been support that Africa has been reaching out for, also debt reliefs, such that the continent doesn't use its funds and resources to pay debts, while it can use that to regenerate its continent, basically, in terms of meeting SDGs, in terms of economy, health, education. And then, of course, there was a conversation about artificial intelligence, AI. The direction that AI is going right now is just the Western countries that really are reaping the fruits or the benefits of or the advantages of AI. So there's also the parts where African countries are looking towards greater collaborations with the West and with themselves, African countries, to build stronger technology that can challenge or rival what we get from the West. So I think these largely, but in particular, having a permanent seat at the Security Council have been the conversations that have been pushed by the African leaders so far.
The optics is looking like everything is great. You asked the question earlier, what can the UN do? But talk to us about possible fatigue, resource constraints, and logistics, staff coordination, perhaps, if that is affecting the capacity of some African delegations to fully engage and push.
I wouldn't say so. On the contrary, staff delegation, fatigue, resources, I would doubt that. So, on the contrary, the African contingents who came were pretty much in large numbers. You know, you would see a president or a minister or whoever is representing an African country, and then his or her entourage would quite be in large numbers, and you would wonder why the large numbers. And this is a conversation that some of us had on the side. When you consider the cost, when you consider the resources that it would take for a leader to come to the UN General Assembly and probably stay between 4 to 7 days, and then you look at the number of people that come with them when they're coming in or going out, you calculate that and put that in monetary terms, in terms of their feeding, their transportation, where they will stay and all of that. And then you will think that for African countries that are complaining about resources, this is quite elaborate, you know, whereas some other countries came with just a handful of people and didn't have and then didn't have any issues, and you begin to wonder, what agenda exactly are we trying to push forward? You know, yes, you would understand that, you know, these leaders should come with some kind of support in terms of motivation and in terms of delegates who are going to speak and who are going to push forth their agenda. But again, to answer your question, I don't think any of that affected the African leaders who came, because they came ably represented and with quite an entourage. Of course, not all, but a good number of them came with a good number of representatives.
I really had to ask that question because it's been back to back activity all through the past 4 days. And I mean, the question had to come in. But thank you for your very insightful response. The questions remain. What can the UN do? Thanks for the coverage. We'll see you tomorrow.